Awesome, thank you. So today I just wanted to have a quick chat with you because I think you're completely amazing in the things that you have achieved in your life and the amazing books that you and your late husband Richard wrote, the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff books. So tell us a little bit about yourself to start with and where you're going at the moment with your public speaking and all of that type of thing.
All right. Well, Richard wrote the first Don't Sweat the Small Stuff book back in 1997, and it was his 10th book. It wasn't his first book, it was his 10th book. So for any aspiring writers, just so you know, it's not often your first book that is the, big bestseller that you have. It could be far later down the road, and certainly that was the case for him. It took about 10 years before he had a big time bestseller, but in 10 years, sort of like making it to the, if you work really hard, if you stick with it, then you can oftentimes, you might have that kind of success that comes with tenacity. And so certainly as a young married couple, we very much had an amazing partnership. And they say when two people who are really I don't know, super compatible and create a really strong marriage, come together, and there's an enormous amount of creative energy that can come from that truly supportive marriage, which is what Richard and I had. We used to say we had a lot of issues, but not with each other. So um, we had then Richard invited me to write Don't Sweat the Small Stuff in Love with him, and that was about the third book in the series, and he would be considered one of your early branding authors. And after that, we had a great time promoting that. There's some YouTube videos online of some of our interviews and things, little clips in videos I published. Or like in our younger years, I think I resembled more of a hyper golden retriever than anything else. He was very calm, and he really knew what he was doing. I think I was a little nervous in those first few interviews, and then he invited me to write Don't Sweat the Small Stuff for Women really shortly after that, and it was kind of crazy because I remember just not really wanting to do that because I didn't really see how two authors in the house could really function because he was traveling so much. And at that point, I have to say, I wasn't super money motivated at that point. It was about 3 or 4 years into the series, and I kind of thought, why would I do that to my life? My life was already crazy with 2 kids in elementary school. But he really kind of said, if you don't write Don't Sweat the Small Stuff for Women, then another woman will have to write it because I'm a man and I could, assist, but I can't write the book. So I, of course, decided at that point that I would write it. And the beautiful part of that story for me is that Richard introduced me to a career that I had no idea that I was capable of doing. And yes, did I always know I could write? Yes, I was always an exceptional writer in school. I was extremely expressive. I could write poetry. I could write amazing letters to people. But did I ever aspire to write one book, much less 5? No. So I entered into that career with him. I wrote New York Times bestseller, which was very much a test because we weren't sure that as Richard's wife I would carry the weight of the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff brand. And it was really a really amazing, pleasant surprise to me that I did. And that book sold over 1 million copies. And along with all the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff books, it also became a New York Times bestseller. And then I really put that book away, and I went back to my life as a mom, doing all the stuff that I did and with my kids and really involved in their lives. And I always had projects going on, with the house or art projects or interests. I served on the board of directors of Challenge Day. I was busy. I just wasn't like, I didn't really take on the career as a writer. And then in 2006, which was exactly the 10th anniversary of the first Don't Sweat the Small Stuff book, Richard was promoting a book, and he was on a what we thought was just a normal business trip going to New York, and he died very suddenly on the descent of that flight. He had a pulmonary embolism, and it took his life instantly.
Mm.
So, it's a really incredibly happy fairy tale story with a very tragic ending.
Mm.
And, oftentimes in a tragic ending, it does represent a stopping point in a certain life. And certainly in my life, it did at the time. I have to say, though, because Richard was so wise and he was so brilliant in the fact that he introduced me into our global brand. It allowed me to carry on for him after he died, and I have to say, Danny, that it gave me like this purpose to live beyond my kids. Like he died so young; he was 45, and he had so much more to say and so much more to live. And of course, I inherited the wonderful prospect of bringing everything to the internet, which I can't say I love.
Well, we've already
But
started this morning, haven't we?
yeah, exactly. Technology stuff. But that's our story, and I'm really honored to carry on for such a really lovely, beautiful human being that left a legacy of books in my hands to carry on for him. So that's where I sit. I wrote Don't Sweat the Small Stuff for Moms in April of 2012. That was the 9th book to be added to the series, and the first book in many, many years to be added to the series. So, and without him there, that was a little bit daunting, but I did it, and it was also daunting writing for moms because I felt super responsible. Not only did I feel that way when I was raising my kids, but to help other people raise their kids, it put a lot of responsibility into my hands, and I just really stayed with the traditional wisdom in the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff book series. So.
Yeah, that's amazing. And you are such an amazing woman to pick yourself up after, after such a tragic event, I guess we can call it. And I was just wondering, like, if you could give some of my girls advice, because as we were speaking before, I'm a health and fitness or health and wellness coach for all my women, and I do predominantly serve mums. And if that when they come through obstacles, I mean, I know it's completely different to what you went through, but when they feel like they can't go on, or they start sort of making excuses as to, I can't do this because of that, how all the excuses start filling your head. What type of advice would you give them in, like, as the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff books? Because right here I have the one for mums.
Oh, yeah.
And I've also read the one for women. That's amazing, and that's changed my life just recently. And so what would be your number one advice that you'd give them to follow your dreams and sort of, well, don't sweat the stuff that's holding you back, I guess, or events that you just hold on to and don't let you keep living your life.
Right. When we were at the Truth event, we talked a lot about the principles of happiness that are inherent in the wisdom of the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff books. And it really comes from Richard's early work from a book called You Can Be Happy No Matter What, the 5 principles to keeping your life in perspective. So one of the things that Richard talked a lot about in his work, and I talk a lot about, is what does it mean to sweat the small stuff? It doesn't mean that as a mom you don't take care of the details. What it means is that you don't let the minor annoyances of life pull you off track. So you really, and the way you do that is you have to keep life in perspective, right? There's so many very simple strategies that are really just inherent in being a healthy human being. For example, it's really imperative for moms to start out their day very peacefully. Like, I mean, here you are, it's 3:30 in the morning, and you're talking with me. How much more peaceful can it
get?
But you don't have to get up at 3:30 in the morning, but start off with a ritual, a peaceful ritual that is really designed toward inspiring you. That's so important. I mean, there is not an inspirational author or person in the world that doesn't have an inspirational practice. And that means that, it could be something really simple. If you're not a particularly religious or spiritual person, it doesn't matter, because really what you're trying to do is quiet your mind. And that all of this mind chatter, we call them thought attacks that happen. It's like a thought attack is anything that your mind latches onto that's designed to convince you that your life is worse than it actually is.
I like that, thought attacks.
Yeah, a thought attack. So when you find yourself having a thought attack over something that, well, often what comes up in a room full of moms is moms are annoyed at their husband for throwing their clothes next to the laundry hamper, right? They're really annoyed at their husbands and their kids for throwing their clothes next to the laundry hamper instead of in the laundry hamper. Now that is annoying. I agree. However, if you're really stewing about it and getting all worked up about it and using, a lot of energy on it, that's just one small, very simple example of what small stuff really is, and you could think of the same thing about a conversation that you have with a girlfriend. Like often our girlfriends are brutally honest, or they just say a remark, and and if you're PMSing or you're not in a good mood, you're in a low mood that day, that remark really hits home. And what do? You go and you talk to your other girlfriend about it, and then you go talk to your husband about it, and he's just looking at you going, really? This is really what you're bothered about? So
I think me plenty of times.
Yeah, all of that stuff derails you from focusing and putting energy into what you really want to accomplish in your world and in your life, whether it be your athletic performance or an entrepreneurial interest you have or an art project, but because it takes your presence, it takes your focus away from being truly present and immersed in the moment.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. That's really good, because I find that you do hold on as a female to just the, just you hold on to what people say to you, and it's really hard to let go sometimes. I found, reading definitely the Don't Sweat the Small Stuff for Women, how much I did hold on to things, and how much it was controlling my life, and how much, it even stops you from being a positive person, because you feel like you're a positive person, but when you've got putting so much energy into the negativity, you turn into that person. I guess, what you think you become in a way. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, and I think moreover is just being aware of what you're thinking, and the only way to really become aware of your thoughts is to slow it down from the inside. And really, the only way to do that, that I know the best tool to slow down your mind from the inside, is really through meditation, through quieting, through a lot of breathing, through having a peaceful practice. Because, I was just talking to a group of college students last night, and I explained it in a way I've never explained it before. It's like, once you slow down your thinking and you have what we call thought recognition, meaning you become the witness of your thinking, then what happens is you can actually start to see your own patterns of thought. And when you start to see your patterns, because as human beings, we repeat, somewhere between 80 and 95% of our thought patterns. So that means we're only using about 5% of our brain for our creativity and our original thought patterns. And what we want to do is reverse that, right? We want to reverse that. We want to be using far more of our brain for our creative thought, for our inspirational thought, and far less of our brain for our repetitive thought. So what happens is you can start to see these, I call them hamster wheels. You get on this circular form of thinking that just goes around and around and around. When you're on one of those and you start to become aware of it, just this simple awareness of it just pops you right off. And then you can start to choose differently for yourself. You can even just say something to yourself like, oh, no, 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 there I go again, and just sort of using your own sense of humor with yourself is a very, very powerful tool to changing the repetitive thought nature that we have, and really keeping life in perspective is really all about understanding your own mental health and the dynamics that go into your mental health, and practicing a few simple tools that create these thought gaps where there's a distance between your thought. I really think that what you see with children is they have lots of thought gaps, especially the younger the child, because they don't have all the cognitive thinking yet. So you see them, you see their thought gaps, their face lights up, they're just all spaced out. We're not going to be like that spaced out, but when all human beings get really in that thought gap, they're immersed in the moment, when they're super, super present, that is where their greatest joy, your greatest inspiration, your greatest experience of life is going to come from. And many of us just get glimpses of that because we have these moments that we're so present, the whole world lights up, and we can see everything outdoors even looks differently. And that's what I'm talking about. But the more we can do that, the happier we're going to be, and the more we can choose to be more peaceful and happy over being stressed.
Yeah, I love that. Actually, like that's a big thing that we think very alike with in my online program. Like I often, in the weekly tasks, I often ask the girls to think about, I don't know, like, for example, when it comes to food, like think about how you feel before it and how you feel after it, and sort of take the emotions out of, doing that comfort eating and things like that. What do you think of the phrase self-sabotage? Because I come across that a lot when, especially when I don't have the girls like one-on-one or, face-to-face, like so for online people predominantly, and they say, oh, I'm just self-sabotaging, and like I'm not in their I guess zone to be able to watch what they're doing. Like, do you find that that's just an excuse, or do you believe in that? What do you think about that?
Well, I think self-sabotage is nothing but a thought attack gone wild. It's really,
Yeah. Yeah,
it's
I
really,
agree.
it's just really when people want to numb out, to their feelings in a variety of different ways. It's just. I think when people get overwhelmed, they get in fear, and self-sabotage is really directed by fear. And I think the only real way to deal with that is to learn some new tools to breathe, become more conscious, um, and then cut yourself some slack, man. I mean, you know what I mean? Like if you do
Yeah.
blow it, the worst thing you can do, is really beat yourself up, because that just becomes a whole new way to, you're creating all these new neural pathways by beating yourself up. You don't really need to do that. Life is here.
Yeah.
Life is too short. Just you have your goals. You just make it, shoot for 80%, 90%, whatever, but don't beat yourself up when you blow it. And because I think that's, I just don't, I think that we've got to be a lot more self-compassionate,
Yeah.
and we'll be more compassionate with other people when we're more compassionate with ourselves. And then it's not so big of a deal, like
Yeah.
I think that's a lot of what happens in addiction, self-sabotage, numbing out. It's just people just say, "Oh man, I blow it. Now I'm just going to go to town on it."
Yeah. Yeah. I agree. That's awesome. Thank you. I've just got one. I asked my girls if they had some questions to ask you, and I probably have 1,000 more now that they've seen us chat. But only one of the girls came up with a question for you, Hayley Williamson, and she asked, "What made you and Richard come to the realization that you personally shouldn't sweat the small stuff?"
Well, honestly, Richard had, like I said, he written 10 books. Don't Sweat the Small Stuff was a chapter title in the book, and his agent pulled it out and said that's the title of the book. Um, you know, it, we, I think, realized that was the massive thought attack that people had, that everyone has, is that everyone turns minor annoyances into really big deal. And,
Yeah.
and sort of like that whole, making mountains out of molehills. It's always been there. It's something people have always done, and it's really kind of can become an unstoppable event in your life. If it's a habit for you. So I think it was a brilliant strategy to create a book series based on that because it was pretty much endless. Like I could probably write 10 more Don't Sweat the Small Stuff books, because you can always think of how people um, stress over life and how to give them better perspective. So, it was just the package, it was just the package
Yeah.
that came to him. So pretty brilliant, though.
Yeah, you're amazing. I really appreciate you coming along and chatting with me today.
Oh, thank you.
I think you're an amazing, inspirational woman. And when I came and saw you in person at the Truth event, you like it really changed my life for the better. I've made massive changes in my life. Just even since then, it was only probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. Yeah, and I feel like I'm on a more relaxed track of life now. So thank you so much, Kristine, and hopefully we'll get to chat again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Danny. So great to see you again. Take care, sweetheart.
Yeah, you too.